Back to the Nutrimedical report. We have Clay and Clay Crossan here. We're talking about all kinds of amazing formulas. We want to ask all the people that if you want to get well, what is the pathway to wellness? Well, the pathway is not polypharmacy. It's not the kinds of exercise you thought you needed. That's why things like VibraSlim and VibraFit, I call, works. You have to understand what is a healthy state. Well, a healthy state is where you don't have toxins in your body. You have the optimized mineral content and vitamin content in activated forms presenting to your tissues. You have adequate digestive enzymes and probiotics in your gut. You don't have free radicals in your arteries or your brain or target organs. You have the expression of your genes because you have all the building blocks to rebuild the tissues. And with all these things working together, you can have what we call optimal health. Now, a lot of people may not be symptomatic yet, but they can have significant imbalances or toxins present. Just like, for example, the latest research has shown that all tissue responds to electromagnetic pollution, all tissue responds to radiological pollution, switching mode power supply, electropollution or electrosmog, and all tissue responds to the fact of deficiencies in minerals. Now, the only way to get minerals optimally by oral forms into your body is by transamino acid chelate, so it's not just dependent on the ionic form. And you also want the activated forms of vitamins because if your body, either from a genetic SNP, we call it SNP, or single nucleotide polymorphism, it can't activate it because of either a genetic problem or a toxin, you're going to be in significant trouble. Trouble means you might be building a plaque in your arteries, you might be getting neurodegeneration, you might be getting micro-injuries to your ligaments, and they can't heal because you can't regenerate the collagen in your ligaments because you have zinc or copper deficiencies. Collagen is not being manufactured rapidly enough to form hyaluronic acid or joint glycosaminoglycans. And so a lot of times what happens to the current medical system waits until a catastrophe happens and then races in with a toxic drug to try to solve the problem. Get away from the toxic drugs. And if there's about 20% of drugs are appropriate 20% of the time, and as time goes on, that number is going to continue shrinking. If you had asked me this, say, 20 years ago, I would say probably 75% of drugs would be appropriate because we didn't have a natural alternative. Now it's down to 20% and dropping very quickly. And as we understand more genetics, we realize the NUTRIMEDS, by the way, you can only have these NUTRIMEDS, either private label or custom designed, if you're a functional medicine physician. You can't just order these off the internet. And if you don't know how to artfully use them based on the diagnosis of what's going on in your physiology, long before you have signs or symptoms, you can't get, quote, well. Wellness is not just the absence of illness. Wellness means your tissues are regenerating, your ligaments are not rupturing apart, your heart is not deteriorating, your cells are regenerating themselves, so 2 or 5 or 10 years down the road, your bone density, your muscle mass, your heart, and your brain are not degenerating. So what sets the NutriMeds aside, in general principles, Clay? Because I think people should understand, when I put together a protocol, which are constantly being updated, I just, for example, for our diabetics, I tell people, you've got to take your Vitamineral Max and Minerals Plus to jump over all these gene defects. We also recommend that people take Nutritrala for diabetics, Diabetoline, Biotin Plus, and especially Minerals Plus, but then they'll need an additional copper because diabetics have a problem with creating what's called a copper-2 chelate that actually causes things like mitochondrial damage and heart failure and shuts off superoxide dismutase 1, which is a copper zinc SOD. And when that happens, you can't generate nitric oxide because it turns into a nitroperoxy radical. And of course, the doctors that don't understand the biochemistry don't understand that even the latest research shows that if you take tetraaminoethylene, you can pull out the copper, but you have to put copper in. So you need the transamino acid minerals plus copper. And of course, I add additional copper with our copper sabacate when we know there's a deficiency. And of course, the best way to test that for all your functional needs is a QRMA, quantitative resonant magnetic machine, far superior even to the functional medicine tests of packed red cells, organic acids, or even gene tests. Because genes basically are just a library of what could happen. They are not deterministic. So, Clay, let's talk about why NutriMeds are so superior. A lot of people don't think that they can just kind of, dial up online and order at Amazon or Vitacost, whatever, and they can just say, well, I think I know what Dr. Deagle's talking about. I'm just going to get something that sounds like what he's giving. Don't do that. Not only that, your needs are going to change, so if you aren't testing, how do you know what you're going to need 3 months from now or 6 months from now? So, Clay, what makes NutriMeds so powerful and our protocols so elegant?
Many different things, Dr. Bill. And I mean, one being that you stand behind these products. You personally choose which products to bring in specifically, and you are, a nutritional genius, a genius in the healthcare industry. You've been doing this your entire life, so right there, I mean, that sets you apart and the products apart because of you. One thing. Next being the manufacturing process that you have your products go through their CGMP, FDA-certified labs that produce all of these products.
Made in America or imported with special laboratory certification from Europe with the top certification possible.
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of the Wild West out there when it comes to supplement manufacturers. A lot of the manufacturers aren't CGMP certified. They're not FDA-approved labs. They aren't doing the third-party testing. So you're really at the mercy of the ethics of the people making them. And, a lot of times they come from China, unfortunately, and we can't, sign off
if you get them from China, you have to have multiple labs certify every batch to make sure there's no incipients, solvents, or toxins, or that it actually does have the herbal in it or the active molecule, because if they use the wrong part of the plant or the wrong plant that's not the same strain as the one for the research done in Europe or Germany, it's not going to provide the same biological effect. And, of course, it has to be also the same molecule concentration from batch to batch, so if you don't have that certification, it's very unreliable. You couldn't take a medical drug that was going to vary in dosage by, say, a factor of 5-fold or 10-fold. It would be dangerous or just ineffective. So I'll tell you what I discovered that's really important, and we'll continue this in the next segment. I discovered when you raise the energy level of the person's body and cells, and again, it's a complex process. You can use Power C Plus is one of the best techniques. You can use mitochondrial support with our triad of Nutritrala, Supernox, and Anti-Age Max to raise that. You can use mitochondrial catalysts, uridine, Vascu Care, which is our propionyl L-carnitine, or IBS Care, which is a slow-release carnitine, CoQ10 ubiquinol, the very best CoQ10 ubiquinol in the world. CoQ10 is supreme, the only non-crystallizing CoQ10. When you raise the mitochondrial energy with nutriodine and all these other things, nutriodine being the most important of all, what happens is the body's circuits raise the energy level enough that the QRMA will pick up the abnormalities or the bioplasm Expert Pro, and the most advanced of all, the clinical, which has got the Hunter function, is a reproduction of the device called a Metapathia from the Nonlinear Institute in Russia, used by the astronauts, the cosmonauts there. And what people need to understand in your bioplasmatic body, which means the plasma means some tissues are charged more than other tissues, there's a potential difference, and it forms a circuit with specific biofrequencies. And those biofrequencies are in sound, phonons, infrared light, and electromagnetics, as well as electrical. And the biophotons travel along the collagen fibers of your body and through the tight junctions of cells and tissues. And what they do, they epigenetically turn on and off genes to actually express your genetics and even create new genetic code during your life. People think, well, you don't create new code. That's not true. You can actually create new epigenetic code during your life that's passed on even to future generations. And what we do is we can actually diagnose that now with the QRMA and the Bioplasm Expert Pro and the most advanced, the clinical. We can corroborate, if you want to, with functional medicine tests which pick up the pathology stage. But long before you have pathology, you have your biophoton circuits are out of balance. So if your QRMA shows that you need, say, gamma E+, which is our gamma E+, or vitamin E, you need magnesium, for example, or you need copper, we know exactly what to give you. And then we can go back and check your bioplasmatic body. If you want to, we can even do functional medicine testing, imaging studies, etc. So what I'm providing is decades, maybe a century ahead of your primary or specialist doctors, and it should be integrated into practice. And welcome back, and just going to change gears. You mentioned something on the break. I think we need to change gears for just a second. I'm really watching Trump really closely, and some of the other candidates. In fact, one of the candidates, I heard from one of our listeners, Keno, in New York, that Ben Carson back in February made the statement that, if there was mandatory vaccines, no one has a right to refuse vaccines, and if there was a and there should be no religious exclusion. Dr. Ben, even if you were going to do that, why would you be so stupid to make that statement? So I dismiss you. I mean, you're off. Now, Trump, let me tell you, Trump is what's called a pragmatist. If you're an ultimate businessman, especially if you've had to have your business go bankrupt 4 times, which is what America needs, is to go through bankruptcy reorganization, he goes to all the top experts. It's not Trump's wisdom, thinking he's some egomaniac, because he's not he's not an ideologue, or he's a pragmatist. And he goes to all these experts that are really good, and then he has their plan reviewed by other experts until finally it's filtered down and says, now will this work? So in other words, he's a fantastic manager. That's how he's able to become a billionaire and even come out of bankruptcy and become a billionaire again. Now, this is like my grandfather, Leon Nyman, who saw highs and lows, but he actually made millions even during the Depression. You have to be pragmatic. And to me, the only candidate that's pragmatic in the entire list, Democrat or Republican, is Donald Trump. And his plan for immigration, which is to get rid of the anchor baby problem, because now most people are aware that the rich Muslims are literally having anchor American babies. The rich Chinese literally can't get citizenship in China because they changed their one baby policy. But what happens is a lot of people in China, unless you're high up in the People's Republican Army hierarchy, they can't get Chinese citizen for a second child. So that child is a persona non grata, so they become Americans by flying to places like Chino, California, having their baby, and it's now an American baby, maybe living in Beijing, but then they go back to university and they're American. They can then bring their family here. So are we prepared to see American population surge from 320 million, which is almost is now, to 1 billion or more in 20 years? No, we don't, especially when the environment doesn't support that unless we start getting primary water, which we could do, and doing other things. But we need to have controlled immigration, where number one, everybody who's illegal becomes legal, like he says. Yeah, I'm on the air.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and we need to have a situation where we have people that are made legal right away, so they're not in the shadows. They're paying their taxes. We need to change things so that we stop all this idea that everything's a freebie, and redo healthcare, which already Trump is talking about fixing. Which means we're going to take care of the poor. If you don't have money, we're not going to let you die or be sick. Like I remember back in the late 80s, they had a COBRA law they had to pass because people were literally dying in the emergency department in Augusta, Georgia. And when I went there, I was working in emergency, the burn unit, and had a private practice in the late 80s. And before I arrived, luckily they changed the law so they couldn't let somebody die outside the emergency room doors after they had a gunshot wound or traumatic accident because they didn't have insurance. That needs to stop. And Trump has a heart. You can tell he's a pragmatist. He wants competition. So insurance carriers have to insure. But we also need to do something to get rid of the state licensing authorities, because they're purely working for the big pharma. We want competition so natural and alternative care has a equal footing to fight against the toxic forms of cancer treatment and heart disease treatment and so on. And we need to, with that competition, we will force doctors to start picking up natural and functional medicine skill sets. They don't need to go back to school. They need to get online training. They need to call somebody like me that'll train them up. You know, if they spend a few hours with a cardiologist, transplant specialist, orthopedic surgeon, intensive care specialist, pediatrician, I'll make them a better doctor, and it won't be convincing that everybody should have forced vaccines. It'll be things like our immunoglobulin product we have coming out in a few months that'll allow all the 26 major pathogens to transfer factors and immunoglobulins, so that the children will be protected but won't be vaccinated, because it'll maintain their antibody levels and prime their T cells to multiply if a pathogen presents itself. So I like Trump. I think he's going to shake things up really, really bad. And he's rich enough he doesn't have to kiss anybody's butt. He's scary to the Democrats because he's presenting a plan that'll make the people that are in the country right now happy, because they can then come out of the shadows and pay taxes and live here. It will probably allow the DREAM Act kids to just stay, but it'll put a stop to the plan by tons of Muslims to come here, or people just to swarm America as the world economy starts to crash. And believe me, as it crashes, you could easily, even in 5 years, have 100 million more people in this country, which we cannot not support without a total economic chaos. So Trump is, to me, the man of the hour. What do you think, Clay?
Yeah, if you look at the program he put together with the help of Jeff Sessions, he's a Republican senator.
Right.
It's quite comprehensive in its approach.
12-point plan. And I saw that, and basically I'm thinking, he doesn't come off half-cocked. I mean, and then he comes out and says, look, I'm going to give you my plan, and it's going to give you specific bullet points, and people say, well, what do I do now? We'd like to criticize Trump. And then when they criticize him that he had his business go bankrupt, he said, I've never gone personally bankrupt, but he said, you had to know the people I dealt with were not nice people, and I used the laws of the country to reorganize my company so I could come back, just like America needs to, because if the world economy starts to crash, there's people like Gerald Celente, who takes a very extreme view about crashing all the stock markets by this fall, and Joel Skousen, who's on the opposite end, thinks it'll be minor, if anything. For example, the devaluation of the yuan, which is a renminbi currency in China, is only 2%. If they devalue their currencies, they won't be able to buy commodities, according to Ann Morrison and other experts. So, I tell people, firstly, I do not believe what... I have a newsletter sitting right on my desk here. Democracy is dead. Greeks created it. Greeks killed it. No, Greeks didn't kill it. When the Greeks are actually voting for a government, the Syriza party, to actually get out of the European Union, that's democracy in action. So, Gerald, you need to start drinking less wine and vodka or whatever you're drinking and start thinking more instead of making obscene pronouncements that are actually way off base. The fact is, the globalists are drooling to get rid of cash. They're drooling to subjugate the population with forced vaccines. That's why they get an idiot like Dr. Ben Carson. As much as people claim he's such a genius, you can train a monkey to do neurosurgery, by the way. I've done every kind of surgery, including open heart surgery, vascular surgery, and orthopedics myself, and assisted at these. So if you think it takes a genius to be able to do these things, you're an idiot. The fact is, doctors are highly trained technicians that may be good technically at something, but to think out a problem like forced vaccination when they don't understand anything about immunology makes me nauseated. And when I see a pragmatist like Trump that gets beat up because he's got swooped hair and he's got a personality and he's brash, he's got what's called I call a PIA certificate, which is a pain in the butt, or rep. He is a iconoclast. And being a pragmatist, he's going to tick people off, but he's going to make money. And what America is a business. Same thing with the business of your health. Do you want to spend 100th or 1,000th to stay well by NutriMeds? Or do you want to subject yourself to either non-experts recommending other nutraceuticals from other companies, even on this network, or your doctor or your naturopath who doesn't have my level of knowledge, doesn't understand advanced testing, imaging studies, organic acids, whatever? What do you want to do? So, this is important for people to understand. Let's be more pragmatic. Thanks, man. So, Clay, I guess I used up your time. We'll see you next Monday.
Okay, Doc.
Well, you triggered me off just like my wife Michelle says on Friday. People mention Trump and then Ben Carson. Unless Trump screws up, so far, he's looking pretty damn good to me. He consults top experts. He doesn't shoot his mouth off. He comes over with a specific plan. I can hear you in the background. Dr. Bob Dennis, welcome.
That's me. Hi.
Hey. Every week I get more miracle stories with the micropulse. And we talked last week about the fact it not only reverses things like organ deterioration, turns off pain like craniofacial pain, TMJ, headaches, migraines. We tell people to put it over their kidneys if they're trying to regenerate kidney function, along with our nutraceuticals like ultrathymine B1, vein away, phospholipids, Minerals Plus, and Copper Regenemax. It's just amazing to me that the reproducing something that the planet Earth generates and selectively taking out the frequencies that stimulate the support of cellular and tissue epigenetics will be so powerful. Where do you see this going in the next, say, 5 years?
Well, what I'm trying to do is something called rational design in the engineering world. And what that means is understanding the underlying mechanisms, the fundamentals of a process, and then trying to design from that point. So what I've really been working on for the last couple of years has been trying to develop the scientific underpinnings of exactly what's happening at the cellular level and the level of the cell membrane, and then using that to optimize the system. A lot of people use the system for a lot of different things, and it just seems to me implausible that it would be optimal. One thing, one sort of protocol that we have would be optimal for everything. So it seems to me there's a lot of kind of fundamental improvements that can be made in the next 5 to 10 years, including making it more portable and easier to use.
Well, one of the things that I'm working with is I have the latest software for the Bioplasm Expert and Pro. And they're based on the Russian Metapathia technology, which is developed by the Russian Space Agency. And if you talk about quantum theory, the quantum theory doesn't just apply to photons, it also applies to solid matter. And so 70 years ago, they started research in Russia on applying quantum physics to solid matter, including living things, and discovered that the biophotonic matter had specific harmonic frequencies that regulated tissue. And basically every tissue is a frequency-dependent harmonic capacitor, which means it builds up the charge and releases that charge at specific frequencies that regulate the genes, the production of structural proteins and enzymes. Well, what the Bioplasm Expert does in the QRMA, which is the simplest and quickest machine for assessing things, is it picks up those biophotonic frequencies and will actually diagnose what's out of balance. So right now, depending on the machine you get 35 panels on the QRMA, and with the Bioplasm Expert, you can do several hundred tissue cuts from every organ right down to the specific parts of cells and even specific genes or chromosomes. And the idea is that what I'd like to see is a downloadable frequency, and then it would tell you which organ to put the electrodes over to do a frequency treatment down the road. So you can actually say, okay, here's the frequencies. We'll download the frequencies out of a selected frequency set that you have, and it would pull out that frequency set, and then the device would do that treatment. So let's say somebody had organic brain dysfunction, and you'd pick up the specific frequencies. Diagnostically, you download over to your little portable micropulse, and then you wear the device over that target organ at that frequency, and you'd see the tissue bioplasmatic, if you want to call it the bioplasmatic body, changed by the frequencies inducing entrainment, and then the tissues would then move toward healing the pathology and the ion channel imbalances and the enzyme activity, etc. So that's where I see it going. Application is in de novo in yourself. For example, I recently had a diabetic that I consulted who had lost half of his kidney function by taking Arthritech, which is a anti-inflammatory, because he had back pain as a diabetic. And with 6 months of our ultrasound B1, he had return of his kidney function, at least on a 24-hour urine test. But what I tell people now is to wear their micropulse directly over the target organs, like their kidneys or their heart, and take the right supplements so you have the signal and substance, and you can de novo cause reversal of heart failure, organic brain dysfunction, post-ECMO brain if you had a heart bypass and you threw off microclots to your brain. You can do that today. You don't need to wait to 2030 or 2050. You can get a micropulse today and start doing that, can't you?
Well, yeah, I think so. And there's quite a lot to it too. A lot of people think of these devices as being sort of like a radio transmitter and a radio receiver, and there's some truth to that. But one of the things that's important about the micropulse device is that the vectors of the B field, the magnetic fields, are rather important. That's why when you use a micropulse device, it has two coils, and that allows you to actually control the vector, that is the direction in space of the magnetic field.
Right.
And so, unlike a radio station, which can basically be, as long as it's within range, it can be in any orientation compared to the radio, the radio transmitter and the receiver. That's generally not true, I find, for PEMF signals. So it's not just a scalar sort of thing. It's not just sort of a, point source and a point receiver with, picking up a frequency. There's a lot more to it than that. And I think the reason for that And, we see that. I'm not just speculating here. This is what we see in the data. So the reason for that is that the induced deep tissue electric fields are sensing things in the environment. They're sensing the interaction mechanically of the body with the environment, and that sets up signals in the tissues that actually have a sense of direction to them.
Right.
Standing up is different than lying down, for example, in the way that it loads your skeleton, and your skeleton responds to it. If you're exercising and you're lying down versus standing up versus some other posture, just the act of working against gravity. There's this gravity vector that dominates our lives. Always pointing towards the center of the planet. So that's another factor that needs to be brought in, and it's not just the frequencies. And there's a lot to it. So there's a lot of basic science that still needs to be elucidated. As far as I'm concerned. Then, of course, you have the challenge of boiling that down into a practical product that's affordable and does something.
Yeah, what I'm working with now is I'm working with the scientists to try to actually get them to open up the database so we can actually get a numerical frequency readout after it diagnoses a specific organ dysfunction. If you can do that, then you can actually do a frequency transfer to the device. They're going to be even more specific.
Well, I think it would be very, very good. It's what you're getting at. I think is a sort of a biofeedback type of arrangement where you'd be looking for a signal, and then you'd be using that signal to control what the system does, and then you use that control over what the system does to generate another signal from the biology that tells you further. What needs to be done.
And you can have the device at home and test it weekly or monthly, or you could have a clinic where you go in and they actually test you and readjust your treatment frequencies. So that's where I see it going. Now, I love this little device. When I had a lot of dental work, when I threw off my TMJ joint, it stopped my craniofacial pain immediately. When I see I have a strained joint in my knee or whatever, slap it on, 20 minutes, not an hour or two, but 20 minutes later, it's going down from a 6 or 7 down to a 1 or 2. There's nothing like the micropulse. Stay right there, Dr. Bob. We're on for another segment. And we'll talk more about the amazing applications to micropulse. And if you put the code Dr. Deagle, DR Deagle, you're going to save $30. So it's under $400. You can't beat it. So get 2. Don't just buy 1. 1 for yourself and 1 for your friends. So I have a lot of protocols to post up over the last, say, 6 months that I've been working on. Tons of consults all over the world. A lot of them are for actually health professionals. Doctors, they listen to the program, they say, I want to get better. They won't suffer being treated by their own colleagues anymore. Or they suffered a serious medical problem, or they've already gone through a lot of treatments. Like I just got a call the other day by a gentleman about his little boy who has got a intratentorial multicentric astroglioma, stage 4, metastatic brain cancer that has already gone through 3 months of radiation, which causes increased intracranial pressure, upregulation of microglial free radicals, and of course he's tired all the time and he can't function. He's also had chemo, which makes the tissues more radiation and chemo resistant. This is very wrong-headed. Cancer basically is an infection of tissues in a low redox state. And when you're using a micropulse, one of the first things that I tell people to prep up the tissue is high-dose power C, mitochondrial support, raising what's called a redox or electron density in their cytochromes, increasing we call oxidative metabolism with things like the power ones, a mild hyperbaric oxygen therapy with ozone and an oxygen concentrator, the right NUTRIMEDS to support mitochondrial function in a high redox state like power C+, etc., and all our other nutraceuticals for mitochondrial. And then the micropulse under scalar technology and lumen photon. And then finally, various of our nutraceuticals like Silver 100, oncomycin, or which is myco-D2, that has ergothioneine, which is the first enzyme marker that's actually activated to cause tissues to regenerate. And of course, we do have stem cell lines at Nutrimedical in San Diego, and they have their clinic in Santa Clarita, Tijuana, and there's another one in Astana, in Ulaanbaatar, I think it is the capital of Central Asia. you get stem cell therapy. So, and you can also do autologous stem cell therapy, where you actually take your own stem cells out, like Dr. Centeno and Thacker, or platelet-rich plasma, which is a kind of quick and dirty system that the dentist can use to regenerate your bone and your teeth. But I tell people, you need the signal. And that's where micropulse, I think, and I have all big fancy machines. I've had a Metapathia. I have, sitting right beside me, one of the big, 20,000 Tesla magnetic pulse machines. These will literally are strong enough to make your teeth rattle. Let's put it that way. You don't need that, though. If you're trying to take with a straw and blow an egg across the table, you do not need a shotgun. You need to have a straw with a gentle blow of air. And what's neat about the micropulse is it gives the right signal frequency to turn off craniofacial pain, to be safe for everybody to use, and to start stimulating tissue regeneration. So if somebody's got a bad knee, I tell them, go to the orthopedic surgeon, get the crap cleared out of the knee with an arthroscopy and a flush, deburr the areas if there's fibrillated cartilage hanging off the cartilage, put a Highland injection in there to give a hydroviscous layer, start taking our nutraceuticals and slap on your micropulse and wear it 24/7. Don't take the sucker off. Keep that on there with a little Velcro pack, and wear keep on swapping out every 12 to 14 hours your lithium pyrophosphate batteries. And guess what? You're going to build a brand new knee without having to have somebody cut your knee open and put in an artificial, man-made knee that'll fall apart or give you a horrible infection or materials intolerance. So, to me, it's very exciting what you're doing. It allows us to combine the power of ones, oxygen, NutriMeds, energetic technology, and stem cells, to let people take back control of their health rather than to let the very narrow-minded doctors who think, well, I have a few drugs in my armamentarium, and if you don't take those and if you fail, it's your fault, or you've got bad tissue, or it's just too late, but it's not my fault, I won't take responsibility. And that's part of the problem with the medical system. It is, in a sense, I call a failing business model, and that's why the medical system right now is a dinosaur that's soon going to become extinct. Doctors are either going to move forward into what I call advanced functional medicine, or when their colleagues start to move forward, like my colleagues, Dr. Centeno and Thacker, they had to move their clinic outside the United States to the Grand Cayman. If you have a problem, you're just going to go across to Tijuana or Grand Cayman or Central America, because if the regs are so bad in this country that you can't get proper non-toxic cancer treatment, or like this little boy was astroglioma, I tell them, if you want to augment your immune system attacking the tumor, you want transcranial micropulse therapy as well as hyperbaric oxygen, high-dose power C, and our other nutraceuticals like malignoblock, malignarest, to fight the cancer. Because you rev up your immune system, it'll remove the cancer cells, but you can't use conventional treatments like radiation, never, chemo, paint by numbers, never, only gene-based cancer therapy and off-label drug use, and you get response. So, what do you think, Dr. Bob? I get tremendous reports, of people having success by using their micropulse combined with their NutriMeds and other technology like hyperbaric oxygen, and they get better. And they're getting better.
You need to have the right signal and the right system and the right substance. That's absolutely true. And you have to have the right environment as well, and this is where hyperbaric oxygen is extremely helpful. One of the things that you were talking about, and you and I have discussed this many times, relates to stem cells. And a lot of people don't realize that circulating throughout their body, throughout their lifetime, are circulating stem cells. And these stem cells are available to different organ systems just simply through the blood. And we know that we can, take small samples of blood. We can, now these days we can isolate stem cells. And one might ask the question, well, if the stem cells are already there, why, am I not getting the kind of tissue recovery, tissue regeneration that I need? And it's because the stem cells don't take up residence in places where, they're under siege. It's hard enough when you have like a large injection, a large bolus of stem cells, just to get them to stay where you inject them. And even your autologous stem cells, your stem cells from within your body that are available, they have to be in the right environment to do their work, and that's what the micropulse is all about.
Right. Now, micropulse increases what's called the signal-to-noise ratio. What my goal is to do is to get a DR cap version of the Mountain Red Velvet, which I'm working at, actually. What I'm trying to do is import the Mountain Red Velvet, and I have my own capsulator. I'm not going to wait for the Australians to certify DR caps. Number two, I'm going to actually work with a U.S.-based pharmaceutical company, or European, to actually make a surgical version there'll be 3 different forms: an intravenous micro encapsulated form that can be given by IV, so you can give it to somebody after they had a heart attack to regenerate their heart muscle or their brain. Number 2, a surgical implantable strips and, or if you want to call it, a micro powder to put in surgical site to speed healing. And I believe that we will be able to produce a form of what I call ECM that will be very biostable, not cause any rejection, but will amplify the stem cells getting off the circulatory freeway, and then having the knowledge, because it acts as a scalar transducer with the cells and tissues in the target organ, because they're releasing ergothioneine, they're releasing other markers to say, here's a little flashing neon sign, get off the freeway, here's where you need to rebuild the cardiomyocytes in the heart, or the myocytes in the muscles, or the ligamentum, ligaments of the body, or the glycosaminoglycan of the cartilage. And those markers, if we amplify those with ECM, then it'll work. That's why I think the big defect of all of the current projects to grow arms and legs and hearts and so on is never going to go anywhere until they have what they call biostable, complex, and complete biologically, we want to call it bioequivalent ECM to a fetus. And that's what we have. We just need to have a surgical version that will not be biodegraded by your stomach acid or pepsin in your stomach or digestive enzymes. And when you have the scalar signaling, you're literally creating the signals that are present in the fetus. Once you have that, literally after an accident, the first thing that I would do is I would give people a cold IV and drop their core temperature at 85 degrees so they would basically be cold and they couldn't die, and you put them into an artificial coma, transport them to a neurointensive care unit, and gradually resurrect them over the next few days or weeks as you rebuild their organs or tissue structure and do whatever necessary surgery without the danger of losing their cortex or causing permanent end organ damage. And I believe that technology is right around the corner. I've researched for years and contacted people at the University of Pittsburgh and others that are working on what's called a mitochondrial death signal and other things. And in fact, it's interesting that a lot of the components that I've put together here, including the scalar signaling, fits into the thesis I talked to Dr. Ron Klatz this morning, who's the head of A4M, American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, founded it 26 years ago. And I'll be presenting a paper in Las Vegas this December because I believe I've cracked the code of what aging and disease is, not just for humans, but for all living things. And this is going to change things radically, and it fits in perfectly with your research on signal, substance, and epigenetics, microtubules, and all kinds of advanced scalar biophysics. And in fact, it's extremely elegant and simple at the same time complex. But it all makes sense. If you want to get better, you need the right signal and substance. Get a micropulse. Don't order 2. Order 3 maybe, because give 2 to your friends and keep 1 for yourself. You still get the break in price. $30 off with the code Dr. Deagle, under $400 a piece. They're amazing. Go to the front page of Nutrimedical, and Dr. Bob will have you back on soon. Stay right there.